All right, I'm now joined by a very special guest, recurring guest, friend of the show. It is Christian Saez. He covers the Colorado Rockies for DNVR out in Colorado. Christian, I had you on last fall to talk about the Rockies. A lot's happened since then. I was just saying one of these times where I'm going to have you on, it's going to be positive news for the Rockies, but today maybe a little bit less so. But how are you doing first off?
I'm good, man. Positive isn't really associated with the Colorado Rockies right now. Maybe you could say our bullpen has been pretty good, decent, throughout this year, but that's about the only thing we can hang our hats on right now. So there is a lot to talk about in Rockies world.
So much to talk about. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the bullpen too. I'm glad you brought that up. But we'll start with the big news. The one that everybody's talking about is the firing of Bud Black as the manager. Bud Black's the reason I started pay attention to the Rockies, just because I noticed this groundswell of support for him last year. And there was a 21 to nothing loss over the weekend, and then weirdly they won a game, and he was fired shortly thereafter. In his ninth year in Colorado. But were you more surprised by the move, the timing of it, the fact it came after a win? Paint me a picture of everything from Bud Black's firing from your perspective.
I'm not surprised by the decision to fire Bud Black. I mean, when you have a historically bad start to your season as a franchise, things have to change. And obviously, they fired the hitting coach just about a month ago. I wasn't really expecting too much to change. Nothing really did change. And so the next obvious step is to fire the manager. So the move itself makes sense, but the timing of it was strange, like you just alluded to. And I was just talking about this with someone earlier. It was interesting because the general manager, Bill Schmidt, goes out on the record and says, "Hey, we've got Bud Black's back. We've got him, we support him. We are all in on Bud Black. We think he's still a good manager for this team." And then 24 hours later, well, they go and fire Bud Black. And so what that shows to me is that I think if I'm going kind of from an opinion perspective, I think Dick Monfort, the owner of the Colorado Rockies, was the one who made the decision to fire Bud Black because I just don't see a world in which the general manager goes on record and says, I have faith in our manager and our coach to continue with this ball club, and then 24 hours later go out and fire him. If he already knows he's going to fire him within those 24 hours, he's not going on record saying that. And the other part of it is, I don't think he's waking up in the morning, the very next day and saying, you know what, I think today's the day we're going to fire him. I think it was something that he probably was already thinking about at that time. So to me, the optics of that show that that feels like something the owner stepped in and said, we need to make a change, and we're going to do this pretty much right after this game, whether it's a win or a loss. And I think that alludes to deeper rooted issues in the Colorado Rockies organization from a top down perspective in how they run things systemically across decisions with coaches, decisions with players. And we're starting to see that with how the team has started out this year.
I think the exclamation point was the getting blown out at home. It was pretty jarring to see 38,000 people there that day to watch them get absolutely destroyed by the San Diego Padres. Did that stand out to you when you're watching that back and you're like, wow, we had a full house for this one?
I've kind of become numb to it at this point because the Rockies are a team that will sell out games, whether they are a 100-win team or a 100-loss team. And that's just the reality of where we are in Denver, Colorado. They call it Coors Field is the best bar in Denver. So I'm kind of numb to that at this point. And you also have to understand that the majority of those fans were there to see the San Diego Padres and not the Colorado Rockies. But I think we're starting to see change when you're around the team a lot and you cover the team and you're at every single home game. Yes, the fans are going to show up for the Yankees series, the Dodgers series, the Padres, the Cubs, all the big series, firework night for 4th of July. But some of the less prominent series, we're starting to see fans not showing up. And so we are starting to see a shift from fans who normally go to every single game to, now we're starting to see games that have 15, maybe 20,000 fans instead of 30 to 35,000 fans. So it is starting to show up. And I do think ownership is starting to take notice that, what's been working in the past has not worked this year in the same way.
Yeah, because I was reading obviously if you want to, impact management, you want to, send a message, it's don't show up. But a part of me is like, well, that feels like it's hard to do when you have the coolest, nicest place to hang out and the great weather you said in the summertime in Denver. So it's like I don't know if I would have the strength to just say I'm gonna purposely not go to this really nice, awesome place just to send a message.
Yeah, I'm going to take the complete middle ground here. I will not bash someone for taking a stand and saying I'm not going to give the Colorado Rockies a cent of my money throughout the summer. I'm going to boycott the Rockies. I've talked to plenty of fans who have felt that way, where they're like, this is not what I need, in my life, and so I'm not going to do that. But I also completely understand the fans that are saying, you know what, this is my baseball team, and I'm gonna ride. I'm a ride or die, right? Like I'm gonna be with them through the ups and the downs. So I understand both sides. But I was just saying this earlier. I'm not someone who's going to actively root for my team to lose. When the Rockies win, I will celebrate those wins. I will celebrate when individual players do well as a fan. But I do think from a systemic situation, the Rockies, for the front office, a very stubborn front office and ownership group, for them to take notice, the Rockies kind of have to be historically bad. And we're starting to see them take notice now. And so I think there is a reality to if the Colorado Rockies fans want to see change long term, there almost has to be an understanding that the team has to be really bad for the ownership group and the front office to really commit to lasting change. So I do think there's a double-sided coin in this situation, and it's a tough spot to be in for the fans for sure.
Well, it definitely sounds like the play on the field is definitely being the driver of some of this change. Obviously, the getting blown out, the historically bad start. I think they're on pace for the loss record. And, this is the third year in a row is like Oakland, Chicago. Now Colorado is going to set the all-time loss record. So from a competitiveness standpoint of baseball, not great. But, we got a new direction. We have a new manager. We have Warren Schaeffer, who's 30 years younger than Bud Black, it feels like. So what have you liked about what you've seen from Warren Schaeffer so far? Does he feel like the right guy to lead this group of Rockies right now?
He could be. I have nothing against Warren Schaeffer personally, or even as a manager. I think he's done all of the things that he's needed to do correctly. He's a lifelong Rocky. He's, got drafted in the organization back in 2007. He spent 9 years in the minors, coaching, working his way up to the big leagues. Like he's the, kind of gritty idea of a coach, young, energetic, and seems like he could be a really good voice. The issue I have with the Warren Schaeffer decision, or at least temporary decision as the interim manager for the Rockies, is that the Rockies feel like they only hire within. And so, again, this isn't a reflection of Warren Schaeffer. He's done everything in his power to be the right fit for the Colorado Rockies. But as a whole, the Rockies just do not hire outside of the organization. They brought back Clint Hurdle to be the hitting coach, and now he's the bench coach, with Bud Black moving on. This is an organization that just does not hire outside of Colorado. And so for me, I think I'm really craving this hire that just comes in from outside and can give a different voice, a different perspective to the Colorado Rockies. That's what I'm craving. So again, it's nothing against Warren Schaeffer. I think just as a whole, he's kind of a byproduct of a system that has been set up to fail that I'm hoping to see change in. Now, I think if Warren Schaeffer is the long-term solution and he gets hired as the permanent manager for the Colorado Rockies, it's not the wrong decision. I just would personally like to see a little bit more out of the Rockies, and to be honest, I don't think we're gonna see that. But that's just my personal take on the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, that feels very valid. Yeah, they definitely have been they run themselves as kind of like this mom and pop outfit. They have always pushed back against the criticism of like, they're very insulated. They're like a Western outpost of baseball. That they don't like that when you say that. But yeah, you're right. Look, for this year, for right now, let's give him a chance because he's coached some of these young guys in the minors before. I think he's been around with the Ryan McMahons and he's seen some of these guys develop. But do you think having Clint Hurdle there as kind of like his mentor, showing him the ropes? Granted, again, they're both inside guys. We'll put that aside for a second. But do you think just having his presence there, do you think will be beneficial?
I think so. Clint's a good guy and a good baseball mind, and he's been around the game for a long time. And similarly to when you bring up a young prospect, which the Rockies have lots of them in their organization right now, you try to strategically pair those young prospects with a couple seasoned veterans that can kind of show them the ropes, lead the way, and hopefully when those veterans retire, kind of pass the torch on to, the younger guys. Clint Hurdle to me feels like that. And I would even say Bud Black was that to Warren Schaeffer as well. We all knew that Warren Schaeffer was in the coaching line if those decisions were ever made to move on from Bud Black. And so I think Bud Black and Clint Hurdle were mentors in a sense, to Warren Schaeffer, and I think he's set up to be in a good position right now. The players really respect him. I think he's a good baseball mind. He's been in this game for a while. Again, on paper, Warren Schaeffer is a perfect fit for the Colorado Rockies, and he brings an energy that we haven't seen within the coaching positions in the Colorado Rockies organization in a while. So on paper, I think he's a good fit.
One thing I was reading about, just like there's a lot of articles written in the days after Bud Black was let go about the way he managed, like the way he handled veterans versus young guys. I was reading he definitely relied heavily on these veteran stopgap type players instead of letting the young guys ball out. I'm a Zach Veen guy. Zach Veen's in AAA right now. Did you get that sense when Bud was there, especially as of late, where you're like, I really wish some of the young guys would just, take the restrictor plates off these guys and let them run out there?
Yes and no. I think there were some decisions, some coaching decisions specifically that I've disagreed with Bud Black. I mean, when he pulled Kyle Freeland out in the opening day, 67 pitches in, hadn't given up a run, well, basically only given up 2 hits, I think, at that point, and he pulled him out 67 pitches in. Like those kind of coaching decisions I disagreed with. And maybe there were a couple decisions over the last couple of years where it took a while for them to really commit to the youth movement. But I always say, like, if you've been around baseball, even for teams that are losing, whether you like it or not, the manager's going out there trying to win. And so if there is a rookie who's not quite ready yet, even if this is a team that's not going anywhere playoff wise this year, like the Colorado Rockies are, the ultimate, reality is that Bud Black was going to play his lineup in a way that he thought he could get a win. And there were some veterans that felt like they were, I don't know, maybe had a little bit more momentum, even in a slight sense, than some of the younger guys. Zach Veen's strikeout rate was very, very high. So I'm kind of trying to split hairs here to defend him a little bit, but I think the reality is the Rockies needed a very young voice and a young energy to come in there and kind of fit with that youth movement. And Warren Schaeffer feels like the better fit to that. So, do I think Bud Black was the wrong person to be leading the train? I don't think so. I think the issues went far beyond him, but I can understand where people felt like he wasn't the right fit because he was a very veteran heavy and veteran focused manager.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Because some of these people pointed to, like, they brought Bud in. It was 2017. They had a lot of established veterans of the team already, so they felt like he did a better job of managing an established core. Whereas now we're going youth movement. They're the 10th youngest team in baseball. Maybe we'll shake it up. We'll give Warren Schaeffer a shot. But do you think it was any coincidence that Chase Dollander had 6 no-hit innings in the first start of the Warren Schaeffer era?
I think it was pure coincidence. When Bud Black was still the manager, my buddy and I were saying, is there one person on the Colorado Rockies, pitching wise, that could throw a no-hitter? And we both agreed it was Chase Dollander. Pure stuff wise, his stuff is elite stuff. He's just young and hasn't pitched in the big leagues, and his fastball plays up in the zone sometimes, and he gets in trouble, right? Like that's just young pitching. But he showed, the other day that he absolutely can compete at the top level when his stuff is working and when his command is there. And he made one mistake, and that one hit cost the Rockies the game, And I think the issue with the Rockies is that, their margin for error is just so thin. Um, One mistake and that cost them the game, and Chase Dollander learned that the hard way. But I think whether Bud Black was managing the Rockies, Warren Schaeffer, or if I was the manager of the Rockies, Chase Dollander would be a guy that is going to have his ups and downs. But I think he's trending up, and he's one of the rare guys I'm really excited to see long term in this Rocky squad.
Absolutely. Yeah, 23 years old. Like, he's got the high 90s fastball. He's got the makings of, a horse of a rotation, which I don't know. When's the last time the Rockies have had a true, exciting, young fireball throwing pitcher like that?
I'd have to go back to John Gray would be the last one. I mean, at least from a prospect perspective, when John Gray was bouncing around the Rockies minor leagues, everyone kind of had this expectation that he was going to be the next big thing. And Chase Dollander feels very much the same. His stuff is elite. Like you said, he sits around 97 to 99 on his fastball, which I think I was looking at a graphic the other day that was saying that him and Paul Skeens have the two fastest starting pitcher fastballs in Major League Baseball. So, I mean, you're putting him in elite categories just already, just based on his stuff alone. And when his accuracy is dialed in, he's unhittable at times, as he showed the other day. He's just got to grow as a pitcher, and I think we're going to start to see that. But for him to be in an organization that struggles with pitching in the way that the Rockies do, and pitching at Coors Field, you kind of have to grade him on a curve. And I think that's what he's realizing at this point. And that's what we're also seeing out of the bullpen as well. The bullpen putting up some really interesting numbers. Again, graded on a curve. They're coming in the fifth inning. They're not really having to protect a lot of leads. It's a very interesting situation that the bullpen has been put in. But sneaky good pitching, aside from some of the other starters, sneaky good pitching coming out of Colorado this year.
I was surprised because I remember last time one of my favorite parts was this year, like they don't have a reliever with a true ERA under 5, or might even been 4. And like that they were dead last in bullpen last year. It was pretty bad. But this year I'm looking around. I'm liking some of these numbers, man. Like Jake Bird. I follow you on X. You're a big Jake Bird guy. So like he's been killing it. I don't know who Zach Agnos is, but I like the cut of his jib already. Like it's not bad.
Yeah, it's been kind of exciting, and I will say, if because I had talked to you before, I was the last time I was speaking with you, I was pretty optimistic, saying, "Hey, there's some young guys that we can get excited about. I think this Rockies team has a chance to be okay." Obviously, that didn't work out that way, but if there was one thing that we all kind of predicted that we actually might have gotten right, it was the fact that the bullpen was going to be better, because the bullpen has in fact been better. You've got guys in there that are throwing gas and looking like they are the real deal. But you also have a couple veterans in Jake Bird and Tyler Kinley, who we did not expect to be very good, who surprisingly have been all right. I mean, even trending to the higher end of that category. Jake Bird has had all-star caliber stuff this year, and then you've got a couple young guys like Angel Shiviji and Zach Agnos, who have just kind of burst onto the scene and been exciting and young, and looking like they should. So the bullpen, again, graded on a curve, given that they've had to pitch in very unique circumstances, coming into the third, fourth, fifth inning in some games, have exceeded expectations, I would say.
Can you pronounce that name for me again? It's Angel what?
Angel Shiviji. And I will say, if you've been around the Rockies, over the last year and a half, you probably heard his name said 5 different ways by 5 different people who should probably know how to say his name. It's one that I still don't know if it's correct or not. We get it on the pronunciation guides, and then the broadcasters say it different, the coaches say it different, and he says it different. So yeah, we're going with what I think I've heard a couple times.
I would love to just hear an old baseball guy try to pronounce that. That would be fantastic. Um,
It's comedy, man. It's comedy.
it's got a good ring to it. I just remember like growing up when the Rockies were at their best, they were hitting the baseball. This year, hitting the baseball has been a problem. They really only have like 3 guys you can really count on. It's like Goodman, McMahon, and Beck. I feel like the only guys you can really look at and be like, okay, some offense is coming. How disappointed has that been for you covering this team where you're like, they have guys like I'm a totally a guy. I think we're totally a guys. He's struggled. Like it hasn't been a great offensive bunch this year.
No, and it's been such a letdown, Justin. I came into this year expecting and also hoping, there was definitely a fair amount of hope in my mind, but expecting that this Rockies team was going to take a step forward from last year. Now, does that mean they were going to be a 500 team? Absolutely not. But I figured that they would develop into a position where you've got guys like Michael Toglia, who's theoretically in his prime. Brenton Doyle, same thing. Ryan McMahon, flirting with his prime as well. These are guys that have shown that they can be elite caliber bats when they are swinging it well, and they have all just gone absolutely silent. Ryan McMahon was the worst hitter in baseball all the way up until about 2 weeks ago. Michael Toglia, same thing. Brenton Doyle even had some moments where he's had a couple good stretches, some good series, but overall he has been below average. And Hunter Goodman is really the only consistent hitter in this Rockies organization that, from the opening series all the way till now, he's been pretty much a consistently solid bat. I think he's my front runner for possible Rockies All-Star at this point, if you had to choose one, just because he's the only guy hitting the baseball. The bats have been atrocious for the Colorado Rockies, and that's where I think I start to feel a little bit um, bleak in my expectations of the future, is because it's like, where do you go from here, right? The bats were usually the only thing you could hang your hat on, and now we don't even have that. So where do you go if you're the Colorado Rockies as an organization in the future? Uh, it's too much to say that you're a draft and development team anymore. I would argue you don't have the money to sign any big free agents in the offseason. It's a bleak spot we find ourselves in here in Colorado.
Yeah, second fewest runs scored in baseball. That's just not what you expect. Coors Field, like you think back to all these big boppers and the homers, and it should be theoretically easier to hit homers there. But yeah, it's just like a team wide funk. But also from like a roster construction standpoint, I'm looking around. There are a lot of veteran stopgap 1 year Kyle Farmer, Mickey Moniak type guys. Like, do you think they could just draft and develop their way out of this though? I mean, I don't. Could they go out and spend more money on Kris Bryant type contracts? I don't think so.
That's the conundrum, right? Like there's the Rockies have cut payroll, and I would imagine they're going to be cutting payroll next year for sure. They're definitely with the loss when we lost our TV deal. I think it was 2 years ago, and MLB pretty much purchased the rights to our television broadcast. That alone put us kind of in the hole financially, and now everything's just snowballing. So the Rockies financially are not in a good position. And on top of that, this is an organization that has prided themselves in being a draft and develop or a franchise, a draft and develop organization. And yet, year over year, the Rockies have failed at being a draft and develop organization. They have been on the bottom end of teams when it comes to drafting and develop. I actually read an article the other day that had a quote from an MLB insider, basically, that was saying the Rockies draft and development program does more harm for young prospects than it does good. That's the optics that the Colorado Rockies have as an organization. And so when you look at long term, how do you dig yourself out of this hole? You're very limited on options. There's no one who wants to come sign for the Colorado Rockies. You don't have a minor league system that is, teeming with good prospects that are ready to come make a huge difference. You kind of have to flip the table upside down if you're the Colorado Rockies, in my opinion. You have to start from scratch. You have to trade the pieces you can trade, and you have to start from square one, because when you're a historically bad franchise that the Colorado Rockies are right now, things have to change. And doing things in the status quo way that they've been doing things year over year is making it worse. So the Rockies need big changes this offseason, and I am expecting and hopefully speaking into existence big changes.
Do you think the Kris Bryant deal has changed the way they view large contracts, either from the standpoint of like we don't have enough money because we paid Kris Bryant, or just like look what we did, we spend the money like you guys wanted, and look how it turned out?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's completely shell-shocked the front office, because again, this is not an organization that takes big risks. As a franchise, historically, you can go back and look at the deals that they've made. They have not made big contracts. They've not succeeded in those contracts, and so I think the Kris Bryant one definitely shell-shocked the Rockies, and I think that's going to cause them to hesitate. And on top of that, again, you're cutting payroll probably year over year at this point, and so it makes it even more risky to say, are we going to go give a guy 90 to 100 million dollars and potentially, bankrupt our team at this point because nothing is working.
Dang. I didn't know it was that dire. So the payroll cuts are becoming again. So there's gonna be even more 1 year, 1 mil type guys coming into play.
It really is a draft and develop or die situation that we find ourselves in here in Colorado. And again, the unfortunate part is the Rockies are one of the worst teams in baseball if you look at statistically and historically at drafting and develop. Their scouting team is pretty good. The Rockies have drafted good players, right? So I'm not saying that the Rockies aren't going out and getting good players. Charlie Condon, I mean, he theoretically on paper looks like a very good draft pick, right? Brendan Rodgers, when he was drafted, was a good draft pick on paper. It's the development aspect of that. And that's where I think the optics come into play with the Rockies, is they just do not do a good job of developing those players. Those players, by the time they get to the big leagues, are not where they need to be. And or they just sit around in the minors for too long and they never reach their peak. So again, you're in a situation that's it's kind of a lose-lose situation for the Colorado Rockies because you can't go spend money on big free agents because you don't have the money anymore. And also your drafting and developing process kind of stinks. So yeah, it's tough.
Dang. All right. Well, we'll end on this because I was watching McAfee had Jeff Passan on today. Jeff Passan, this is kind of like in the scheme of baseball, just like the Pittsburgh Pirates are in the same kind of boat as the Rockies. They're both, fighting for the worst record of baseball, it feels like. But Jeff Passan will go on and be like, I think they should trade Paul Skeens. What's the point of even trying to win? Because, they're so far away. And that got me thinking, like, I feel like sometimes in the media, when you have like bad teams, it feels so easy to punch down. Like it just feels so like unnecessarily ragging. Like the Pirates are catching a lot of that now because obviously they have an excellent player, but the team itself isn't very good. But have you noticed this covering the way like bad teams are covered? Like, or is that some of that justified? Do you think?
I think some of it's justified. And I think there is a difference between a team that's playing poorly because the players are banged up. Like, for example, let's look at the Braves last year, right? And the Braves were a playoff team, but they had so many injuries that it really hindered them from being able to succeed long term. And so, they were catching some slack from the media about, them kind of fizzling out and whatnot. And I thought that was unwarranted because of just how many injuries they had that put them in that position, right? They had a good team on paper. They just didn't, it just didn't pan out the way that they were expecting it to. The Rockies have had failure after failure in organizational decisions that have put them into this position. And so I think until the national media and local media, but we've been kind of calling it out for a while, but until the national media really starts to take notice and say, this is an organization that does not know how to operate in the whole grand scheme of Major League Baseball, I think it's going to keep continuing. Again, another MLB executive went on record on an article I just read earlier this morning, basically saying, kind of criticizing the Rockies for saying, look, you run things as if you're operating in 2010, but you still think you're doing things the right way. And I want us to get out of this whirlwind that we're in, this cycle that we're in, where the Rockies kind of defend themselves saying what we're doing works, and being good enough to kind of defend that. The Rockies are no longer good enough to defend that. What the Colorado Rockies are doing as an organization is not good enough to work anymore. Things have to change. And so I'm okay with the national media having a lot of discourse on how the Rockies are run because I think it's exposing how inept this organization is at running a professional baseball team. And I think Colorado Rockies fans absolutely deserve better than what they're getting. This is a city, a state that deserves to have an elite baseball team. You look around to all the other teams who are in the playoffs. Every single one of the professional sports teams are in the playoffs in their respective sports, and the fans are showing out. You give Colorado a good baseball team, the fans will be there in droves. But the ownership, the front office has failed to do that year in and year out. And I think it's time that the world start noticing and taking notice of what's happening here in Colorado.
Do you think it was like? Do you think that in years past when they had like the tent pole guys still there, it was easier for them to be like, the team itself might not be great, but he's still here. Like Arenado's still here, or Blackman's still here, or like Tula, or whatever. Like I feel like whenever teams have like franchise cornerstone, like put them on a banner on the side of the stadium, guys, that maybe gives them a little bit internally more leeway to be like, we are still trying to build around somebody. It just feels interesting now. The Rockies don't necessarily have the side of the stadium billboard guy yet.
Yeah, you spoke it perfectly. I mean, the loss of Charlie Blackman pretty much gave the Rockies organization nothing to hide behind. And I had said it just moments ago, the Rockies were good enough for the front office to defend what they were doing, the systems that they had in place, the process that they had. And by good enough, I don't mean on paper wins and losses. They obviously lost 100 games last year, but they had a guy like Charlie Blackman who was the big name that everyone knew. And you could kind of hide behind those guys and say, well, we're building around that. We have two gold glovers in Brenton Doyle and Ezekiel Tovar and a gold glove nominated third baseman in Ryan McMahon, who was our all-star. And you're hiding behind this individual stardom that is happening out there on the field. And now, for the first time this year, the Rockies don't have that. They don't have Charlie Blackmon, who's going to bring fans in. And the interesting thing when you bring that up is when you go watch a Colorado Rockies baseball game and they announce the starting lineups, there's not a single person throughout that starting lineup, no matter what the lineup, what the lineup variations are. There's not a single person that gets a resounding applause from Rockies fans, even if it's just Rockies fans who are there, like even if they're playing a nobody. Last year, you at least had Charlie Blackmon that like everyone would stand up and cheer for every time his name was announced, right? You don't have that anymore. You don't even get that for Ryan McMahon or Bretton Doyle. The fans are checked out. And it's the diehard fans that are going to be there through thick and thin. There's a few of those out there, and God bless them. They're the sickos that stay out there and keep it going. And I'm very much one of them. But the fringe fan, the casual just sports fan who wants a good baseball team but isn't gonna put themselves out there for a historically bad team, that doesn't exist anymore for them. And so I think not having that face of the franchise definitely hurts the Rockies long term.
I still think I'm a Pirates supporter. I still think even though they are bad, that like I'm still going to give them a lot of leeway, and I might even be the one to hide behind Paul Skeens for a while and be like, they got him. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard when you have like the best rotation of young guys. The offense isn't there yet, but you can always buy bats, right? I mean, bats are cheap, I think.
It's interesting because it reminds me a lot of the Seattle Mariners last year. If you watch the Seattle Mariners, they had the best pitching rotation in all of baseball and one of the worst offensive, outputs in all of baseball. And I grew up a Seattle Mariners fan because I grew up in Seattle, and so this hits close to my heart. You watch that and you see what's going on, and you say, okay, you have a piece of that. You have something that's locked into place that is very necessary. I mean, think of how many teams would kill to have a lockdown starting and relieving rotation, from a pitching perspective. But you are so bad offensively that you can't even really make the playoffs. Like, it's infuriating to another level. Rockies fans, we're sitting here thinking we don't have anything. So it's like you're pissed, but I mean, there's nothing. You don't feel like you're wasting something, right? We just don't have anything going for us. For the Pirates, as a fan, I can't imagine feeling like you're wasting the prime or at least entering the prime of Paul Skeens. And so I'd be upset. And again, I don't diss on the fans for being upset about that. I don't even diss on the national media for pushing back a little bit, because I do think there is something to be said about having a generational player like Shohei when he was with the Angels and making the most out of that.
Good point. Not everybody wants to be Mike Trout and sign up to be just there
I
forever and
know.
ever.
I know.
Poor guy. All right. Well, this has been incredible. I always feel like I learned so much more about the Rockies. I was gonna venture to say I was gonna be a Rockies supporter this year because I weirdly can just email everybody in their front office and they'll respond.
Yeah. Yes.
I was this close, man. I was like, this is the year. I'm gonna do it. Mr.
That,
Monfort and I are back and forth.
That's so funny because so my wife, she played college basketball and grew up a big basketball person. And so she's kind of on the outside of baseball where she's like, yeah, it's a little slow for my taste, but she's open to it. But she's just never really watched it growing up. And so I had told her, I'm like, hey, this year's the year. I'm covering the team, full time now. Like, I'm going to be at every game. Like, we're just going to go. It's like dirt cheap to get into the stadium. I'm like, we're just going to go to tons of games this year. You're going to watch all the games with me, and you're going to understand like what it means to be a baseball fan. And we got like 10 games in, and I'm just like, all right, you can check out. You're good. I don't even want to like subject you to this. And she's sitting there like, is this what it's supposed to be? Like there's no home runs, there's no offense. Like, what is this? So it's a tough team to be rooting for. And again, I call our fans the sickos because we really are sickos, and I say that with pride.
Yeah.
You got to be there for the team when they're at their worst. And I'm going to be critical of this team because I think there needs to be change. But I always say it's going to make it that much sweeter when the team is good one day, whenever that is. I'm going to be remembering these days fondly and happy to have them in my rearview mirror here pretty soon, hopefully.
The lifespan of like being going from bad to good. It's like the Oakland A's are like one of the best teams in baseball. They lost 100 games a couple years ago.
Oh man, I know. I would kill to have the Oakland or not named Oakland
Oh,
A's.
yeah.
I would I
Just
would
the
be
A's.
I'd give up a lot to be in their position right now. Again, an organization that's very poorly run, but somehow has the talent to make it work. And, I'm hoping the Rockies can create a little bit of separation between ownership and, front office in a way that allows them to kind of operate in a different system. So we'll see.
Yeah. And never say never. All right. Well, this has been incredible. I did check out some of those DNVR Rockies podcasts recently, so I'm going to be checking out some more of those. What's the cadence of those? How often do they drop usually?
Twice a week. We had to change our schedule this week because of vacation, but Monday and Friday, every day or every Monday and Friday at noon Mountain Time, just talking for an hour, talking a little baseball. Most of the time it's venting, but every once in a while we throw in some positive stuff. We get
Yeah.
to hype up our bullpen, do a little circle of trust, all that good stuff.
On Hell GVG.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. See, you're already a Rockies fan.
I'm already a Rockies fan, I guess. All right, Christian, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Love it, man. Appreciate it.